The courtroom was already tense before the man even walked in. It felt like the air had weight, like everyone could sense something was about to explode. And then he arrived, Richard Beaumont, a man wrapped in money, entitlement, and the confidence of someone who had never heard the word no in his entire life. He walked like he owned the courtroom. Like the judge, the clerks, the cameras, the audience, all of them were just props in a show where he was the star. His suit alone probably cost more than most people in that room earned in 6 months. And the smirk on his face, it was the sort of smirk only a man who had bought his way out of every consequence could maintain. He took his seat without asking, legs crossed arrogantly, one arm draped over the chair like he was reclining in a luxury lounge instead of a courtroom. His opponent, a quiet middle-aged contractor named Paul Hensley, sat nervously at his table, hands clasped tightly, sweat forming on his forehead. Paul didn't look like much, a man with tired eyes, rough hands, and a life shaped by hard work. But today he wasn't the one who needed to worry. Because Judge Judy was taking her seat. And the moment she entered, Richard didn't stand, didn't acknowledge her, didn't even glance up. The audience noticed. Judge Judy noticed. But Richard, he just continued adjusting the cufflinks on his gleaming silk shirt, pretending that nothing and no one in this courtroom mattered more than the shine on his sleeves. Judge Judy closed her folder and stared at him for 3 full seconds, silent, still, cold. Finally he lifted his eyes. "Something wrong?" he asked casually, like he was speaking to a hotel clerk who had annoyed him. "Oh, don't worry," Judy said calmly, "you'll find out soon enough." For the first time, Richard blinked. The plaintiff Paul swallowed hard, the audience leaned forward. The bailiff stepped back. Judge Judy opened the file. "Mr. Hensley, you're claiming that Mr. Beaumont hired you to renovate 2 guest houses on his property and then refused to pay after the work was finished, correct?" Paul nodded, "Yes, Your Honor." "And Mr. Beaumont," she continued, turning her gaze to the wealthy defendant, "you're claiming the work was unacceptable and unprofessional, and therefore you owe nothing." Richard smiled confidently, "Correct, and I have evidence to prove it." "No, he doesn't," Paul whispered, his voice trembling. Richard looked at him and laughed, loudly enough for the entire courtroom to hear. Judge Judy narrowed her eyes. "Mr. Beaumont," she said, "this isn't your father's boardroom. You will not laugh at the other party, you will not mock anyone, and you will not behave as if this courtroom belongs to you." Richard sat back, laced his hands behind his head, and replied, "With all due respect, Judge, you can't punish me, you can't fine me, you can't do anything except talk, and I'm not afraid of that." A collective gasp filled the room. Judge Judy didn't move. She didn't raise her voice. She simply closed the folder and looked directly at him. "I didn't ask if you were afraid," she said quietly. "I asked if you understood the rules." Richard shrugged. "Money talks, Judge, I'm sure you understand that." 2 people in the audience covered their mouths. Judy leaned forward. "Let me explain something to you, Mr. Beaumont. Money may talk, but arrogance screams, and right now you're screaming at the top of your lungs." Richard laughed again, as if the entire exchange was beneath him. Paul looked horrified. Judge Judy continued. "Let's hear your version. Explain why you think you don't owe this man a penny." "With pleasure," Richard said. "You see, Your Honor, people like him," he gestured toward Paul, "think rich men like me are easy targets. They do cheap work, expect a big payout, and then cry when someone with actual standards calls them out." Paul flinched. Richard kept going. "My guest houses looked terrible. He rushed the job, used low-quality materials, and didn't follow any of my instructions. I have every right to refuse payment." Judge Judy turned to Paul. "Mr. Hensley, your response." Paul opened his folder with shaking hands. I have receipts, photos, messages from him approving every stage. He even signed off on the final inspection." Richard rolled his eyes dramatically. "Judge, I sign things all the time doesn't mean I read everything. The quality speaks for itself." Judy's head snapped toward him. "Oh, don't worry," she said, "we're about to let the quality speak." She motioned for Paul to approach. He handed her the inspection form with Richard's signature, large, sharp, arrogant pen strokes sprawled across the page. Judge Judy held up the document. "Mr. Beaumont, is this your signature?" He didn't even look, probably. Look, Richard said, shrugging, my personal assistant signs half my paperwork anyway. That sentence was the beginning of his downfall. Judy smiled, not a kind smile. So what you're saying, she clarified, is that you're not sure whether you personally signed off on work you claim was unacceptable. Richard nodded proudly, believing he had just given a clever answer. But Judge Judy leaned back. Mr. Beaumont, did you review the property after the work was completed? Of course, he said, I'm a perfectionist. And did you complain at that time? Wells, no. Did you file any written complaints? No. Did you request corrections or repairs? No. Did you reject the crew's work before they left the property? No. The audience could feel it coming. Judge Judy leaned forward, eyes locked on him. So, Mr. Beaumont, you reviewed the work, approved it, allowed the contractor to complete the job, made no complaints, signed the inspection, or allowed someone authorized by you to sign it, and then refused to pay after enjoying the finished product. Richard smirked. That's correct. The room went silent. Judge Judy closed the file again. Before I continue, she said in a strangely calm tone, I need to ask you something and answer carefully. Richard raised an eyebrow, amused. Do you believe you're above the law? He laughed. Judge, please, I'm above people, not the law. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Judy's expression turned to stone. Bailiff, she said, lock the door. Richard's body stiffened. The bailiff turned the bolt. Judge Judy leaned forward. Mr. Beaumont, she said softly, I've dealt with liars, scammers, thieves, manipulators, and fools, but you're something new. Richard scoffed, please, your speech isn't going to impress me. Oh, I'm not trying to impress you, she replied, I'm trying to corner you. She reached into the file and pulled out a document. Mr. Hensley submitted invoices totaling $42,700, is that correct? Paul nodded nervously, yes, Your Honor. And you refused to pay because you said the work was poor. Correct, Richard said proudly. Judy held up a photograph. It was a picture of Richard's luxurious estate, with a wedding party in the finished guest houses. Mr. Beaumont, she said slowly, did you or did you not host an event in the buildings you claim were unusable? Richard froze. The audience gasped. Paul whispered, he did, the neighbors told me. Judge Judy placed the photo in front of Richard. You claimed the structures were unsafe, poorly built, not up to standard, and yet you invited over 200 guests into them. Why? Richard swallowed. Well, I needed the space. So the buildings were safe. I didn't say that. You didn't have to, Judy said. Your actions said it for you. Richard's jaw clenched. Judge Judy leaned back, her voice cool as glass. You enjoyed the work, you used the work, you benefited from the work, and then you decided you simply didn't want to pay for the work. Richard said nothing. And now, she continued, you think your wealth gives you the power to walk in here, lie, and walk out untouched. Richard lifted his chin. Like I said, Judge, you can't punish me. Judge Judy didn't blink. Oh, Mr. Beaumont, you have no idea what I can do. He finally shifted in his chair. For the first time, he looked afraid. And Judge Judy smiled. The silence in the courtroom tightened like a noose around Richard's arrogance. For the first time since he stepped in, the confidence that once draped over him like an expensive coat seemed to slip. His legs stiffened under the table, and his fingers curled slightly, almost unnoticeably, but Judge Judy noticed everything. She didn't speak for a moment, she just let the weight of the silence crush him. Then she opened the second folder in front of her. Mr. Beaumont, you testified the work was unusable, ugly, and dangerously flawed, correct? Richard didn't look at her, correct. And you used these guest houses for an event attended by 200 people. He hesitated, I needed the space, that's all. Judy nodded, interesting because according to this, she lifted another photograph. You used the renovated areas for 3 different events, a corporate luncheon, a private party, and your niece's engagement. The pictures didn't lie. 3 events, decorated interiors, guests everywhere. Richard's throat worked silently as he swallowed. You used the buildings repeatedly, Judy said. That's not the behavior of someone who thinks the work is unusable. Richard clenched his jaw. This is ridiculous, none of this proves anything. Oh, but it does, she replied calmly. It proves you lied. He slammed his hand onto the table. Watch your tone, he barked. I'm a respected. Judy cut him off instantly. You are not respected here, you are not feared here, you are not powerful here. In this courtroom, you are simply a defendant, and you will behave like one. His nostrils flared. Paul watched the exchange with a mix of fear and awe, unable to believe how quickly the tide was turning. Judge Judy lifted a new document, a text message thread. These are messages between you and Mr. Hensley. In them, you compliment his work repeatedly. Looks great. Exactly what I wanted. Perfect. Thanks, Paul. Richard shot to his feet. Those were just courtesy messages, I didn't mean. Sit down. Her voice wasn't loud, but it hit him like a hammer. Even the air felt heavier. He sat. Judy continued reading. After these messages, you approved the final inspection. Then, weeks later, you refused to pay, claiming incompetence. And then, she placed her finger on a specific line. You bragged to your friends about getting free labor. She slid a printed screenshot toward him. The room collectively inhaled. The screenshot showed Richard in a group chat with 3 wealthy friends, boasting. Told the contractor his work was trash, not paying him a penny, free upgrades for me lol. Another message. Money is power, they can't do anything. Richard grabbed the paper, his face draining of color. Where did you get this? Paul looked down. Your former assistant sent them. She didn't like how you treated people. The courtroom buzzed again. Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. Well, isn't that something? Richard's composure cracked audibly. This is illegal, you can't use stolen messages. Oh, I can, she said calmly, because they were submitted as evidence by someone with legal access to them. And they reveal a pattern: deception, exploitation, and deliberate refusal to pay. Richard stared helplessly at the screen, suddenly realizing the one thing he thought money could protect, his secrets, had betrayed him. Judge Judy leaned back. I'm not finished. She pulled out one last file, thick, stapled, heavy. Richard's eyes widened at the sight alone. This, she said, is a report from the state inspector. Mr. Hensley's work didn't just meet standards, it exceeded them. The state rated the renovations as high quality, safe, compliant, and expertly done. Richard blinked rapidly. And here, she added, removing a smaller document, is the permit approval you filed with your signature, which specifically describes the buildings as complete and satisfactory. But his words tangled into each other, useless and panicked. Judge Judy exhaled slowly, giving him a look of pure, surgical disappointment. Mr. Beaumont, you lied repeatedly, boldly, and badly. Richard's lips pressed into a thin, defeated line. But the worst lie, she continued, was the one you told yourself, that you are untouchable. He didn't move. No one moved. Not even a breath dared interrupt her. You walked into this courtroom believing money was armor, but money didn't protect you today, it exposed you. He looked down, breathing heavily. Now, she said, let's calculate the damage. Richard shot upright. Wait. Quiet. She lifted a pen. You owe Mr. Hensley $42,700 for the work. He tried again. Judge, please. Plus late fees for breach of contract. He froze. Plus the cost of the independent inspection he was forced to request. The audience was still. Plus damages for bad faith and intentional non-payment. Richard shook his head slowly. You can't do this. Judge Judy's expression didn't change. And because you hosted events in those structures, putting guests at potential risk while simultaneously claiming the buildings were dangerous, that qualifies as knowingly false testimony. He stared at her in horror. And that, Mr. Beaumont, is punishable. His face turned a sickly shade of gray. You wanted to know whether I could punish you, Judy said. Yes, he whispered. Well, here's your answer. She wrote the number cleanly, firmly, and slid the paper toward him. He stared at it like it was a death sentence. $84,912. Double what he owed. Paul gasped softly. Richard's lips trembled. This is insane. I told you can't punish me. Judy leaned forward, voice low and resonant. I didn't punish you, your arrogance did, I just added the total. Richard stared at the amount again, as if blinking might shrink it. I don't have to pay this, he murmured, though his voice lacked conviction now. Oh, you do, she said, and you will, because the only thing more expensive than justice is arrogance. Richard's hands shook as he lowered himself back into his chair. For the first time in his life, the weight of consequences, real consequences, pressed down on him. Judge Judy closed the file. This courtroom is adjourned. The gavel struck like thunder. Richard didn't move. Paul wiped tears from his eyes, relief, disbelief, and gratitude mixing all at once. The audience began murmuring, shaking their heads, whispering about the wealthy man who walked in invincible and walked out broken. Richard finally stood, but it wasn't with the swagger he entered with. His shoulders slumped, his eyes were hollow, his skin pale. He walked toward the exit like a man dragging chains behind him. Paul stepped aside to let him pass. He didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't need to. Richard turned slightly toward him, guilt flickering in his eyes. For the briefest moment, he opened his mouth, perhaps to apologize. But no words came out. Because karma had already spoken for him. Outside the courtroom, his assistant, the one who leaked the messages, stood waiting. She didn't look angry, she didn't look triumphant. She looked free. And when Richard saw her, something in his expression collapsed even further. You betrayed me, he whispered. She shook her head. You betrayed everyone. Then she walked past him, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, each step sounding like the echo of everything he had lost. He stood alone in the hallway, drowning in the silence he had earned. For the first time in his life, no amount of money could buy him a way out. No connections could shield him. No arrogance could protect him. Judge Judy didn't destroy him. The truth did. And he wasn't just silent. He was finished.